This presentation is the second part of the third module of the subject Construction Management and Safety Engineering of the 5th semester Civil Engineering Diploma program. The presentations made here are based on the syllabus of the diploma program and my book written based on the syllabus. So the contents of this presentation are confined to the syllabus of the diploma civil engineering program. The third module is about resource management and this second part is about store management. The content of this presentation includes stores, different types of stores, store management strategies, issue of material from stores, precautions to be taken in material handling, stock verification process, survey report preparation, surplus stores and safe custody, material accounting statement, transportation problem, reorder level, economic order quantity, delivery of goods, demurrage and wharfage. In this slide, we discuss about stores in general, different categories of stores and so on. Let us find the difference between stores and inventory. Generally, these two words are used synonymously. However, inventory has got a broad meaning. Inventory includes all the materials, right from the raw materials, then the tools and machineries, the semi-finished products, finished products, and the stock which is ready for selling. The whole thing which is not performing is known as inventory. So, in order to optimize the profit, it is essential to keep the inventory at the minimum possible level. Stores, which is also sometimes referred as inventory, but the term stores were referring to only the materials and machineries at a project site. They does not consider the semi-finished products or the construction which is in progress or the finished products or the completed buildings which are ready to occupy. This is a difference. Inventory is the broader sense, whereas the stores is confined to the materials and machineries at the project site. Inventory also include the semi-finished goods, raw materials, and also the finished goods which are ready to sell. Let us now see what are the different types of stores. Based on the materials that are kept in the stores can be classified as material store for general materials, then stores for hardware items, cement stores, oil, lube and fuel stores, stores for stocking explosives which are generally termed as magazine. Then we have the stores of the tools and plants. Tools and plants are generally termed as T&P store. Where there are a quite large number of vehicles in a project site, there will be separate stores for the vehicle department which will be keeping the spare parts of the vehicles, the fuels and oils required for the vehicles and so on. So generally these are the three categories of stores. One is material store, second one is tools and plant stores, then third one is vehicle stores. Now let us familiarize with some of the store management strategies. The first strategy is VED, which is a short form of vital, essential and desirable. So in a stores, we can classify the materials which are very vital for the performing of the project, then the essential items, then the desirable items. Depending upon their need, the materials at a project site can be classified to any of the three groups: vital materials, essential materials and desirable materials. If you take the case of a kitchen, salt is a very vital material. Even though it does not cost much, salt is required for almost all types of preparations. So we can classify salt as vital. In the case of construction industry, cement is required for almost all construction activities. So cement can be classified as a vital material, whether it is mortar for masonry or plastering or whether it is concrete, whatever may be the activity, most of the construction activities requires cement. So cement can be classified as vital. Like that, all the materials can be grouped into any one of these categories. So the priority is always given to the items which belong to the vital category. Then lesser priority for essential items and lesser priority for desirable items. So depending upon their need, items are classified and management strategies are adopted based on that. Next is ABC strategy. ABC stands for always better control. That is, the items are classified into three groups: Group A, Group B B and Group C. A group items are the costliest items, which needs the best control. B group's items are less costly, which needs a moderate control, whereas C group items are still lesser costly, which requires very less control. So in this case, we can classify the materials like that, and the best control or the essential control is given for the items belonging to Group A, because they are very costly and this is the major items which constitutes the cost of a project. Again, coming to the example of salt in the kitchen, if you consider salt in this category, salt will belong to Group C, because even though salt is a vital material, it is the least costliest material, so it will be in Group C. So lesser control can be made for the use of salt, whereas ghee, which is very costly, should be grouped in Group A, which has to be used very carefully. Like that, we can also classify the materials that are used in construction project into 3 different groups based on their cost. Next strategy is JIT, just in time. This is a Japanese philosophy. It has got many advantages, but we have much limitations in using this method in our country. That is, the materials are not purchased and stocked in the organization. They are brought to the project site or the factory just at the time it is required. The major advantage is that we need not have a space to store the material. Second thing is, we get the fresh stock from the market. And the third thing is, the losses due to pilferage or the damages are minimum. So due to these reasons, the raw materials required for construction is brought to the project site just at the time it is required. This philosophy is known as JIT. For implementing JIT, certain parameters are essential. That is, we should be able to ensure that the materials required will be available at the project site just at the moment we require it. Suppose in a project site where a major conduiting work is done, we expect the materials like broken stone, sand and cement to be brought to the site just at the time it is required. You can imagine that about 200 persons are working in a project site for this conduiting work. Suppose the cement is delayed, the whole team has to idle for that much period. So JIT can be implemented only when the resources are reliable and available at the time it is required. Next terminology related to store management is shelf life of material. It is something like the expiry period of the materials or medicines marked on the bottles or packets. Shelf life means the period for which the material can be stored without losing its properties. It is a permissible time within which the material should be consumed or used. For example, the usual shelf life of cement is 90 days, that is 3 months. A cement should be consumed within 3 months of its production. Like that, many of the petroleum-based products like varnish, paint, etc. have specified shelf life, whereas some other materials like reinforcement or brick may not be having specified shelf life as long as they are kept in ideal condition. So we should be aware of the shelf life of the materials that are stored in the stock, and they should be used based on the FCFS philosophy. FCFS means first come, first use. The materials which are taken into the stock first should be used at the earliest. This terminology is very much relevant related to store management. In this slide, we come across certain terminologies related to the store management. The first term is intent. So intent is a request made to the store department through proper channel from the project site to the store. Intent is generally prepared by the assistant engineer in charge of the project, which will be verified and recommended by the assistant executive engineer, and it will be forwarded to the executive engineer for getting it passed. So after passing the intent, it is brought to the store for issue of the material from the store, and based on the stock available and the quantity passed by the executive engineer, the storekeeper will issue material from the store. So the document prepared for issue of material from the store is called intent. It has got a specified form such as the name of the project and the details of the work, then serial number, name of the item which is intended, quantity requested, then quantity passed and the quantity issued. Sometimes 200 bags of cement may be passed by the executive engineer. When the intent is brought to the store, the stock may be only 100 bags of cement. So the storekeeper will issue 100 bags of cement at that instant, and later another 100 bags when the new stock arrives. So this is a document which is prepared for issue of materials from the the departmental store. Nowadays, the department store stocks with regard to the construction materials are very limited. In earlier days, steel, cement, hardware materials such as water closet, things like that, asbestos sheet, paint, etc. were used to stock in the departmental store and will be issued to the contractor from the departmental store through issuing indent. Next is unstamped receipt or USR. Generally, when we receive money, we give a stamped receipt. The receipt given for receiving the money is generally termed as stamped receipt. We affix a revenue stamp of ₹1 when the payment is exceeding ₹5,000 as per the present rules. Earlier it was 500 and years back it was just ₹20. When the amount exceeds these limits, the receiver has to affix ₹1 stamp and give a receipt for receiving money. Whereas in the case of receipt of materials from the store, a receipt is given without affixing the stamp, and that is why such receipts are called unstamped receipts. Next is a document called delivery challan or performa invoice. This is a document which does not attract the terms and conditions of a sale. Suppose the materials are taken from the godown to the showroom, or the materials are taken from the stores to the project site. In these cases, the transport of the material does not belong to the clauses of a sale, does not attract the clauses of collecting taxes. So, under such situations, a delivery challan or a performa invoice is prepared and is sent along with the vehicle as a proof that these materials are transferred from the stock of the own department to a project site. Such a document is called delivery challan. Once the material reaches, one copy of the performa invoice or the delivery challan will be signed by the AE and will be returned to the stores as a proof that the materials issued from the store has been received as the project site. So next is bill or invoice. This is a document which comes under the clauses of the sale. Proper taxes should be collected while preparing a bill or an invoice. Bill is an older term. Now in GST, the term used is invoice. So the invoice or the bill should be prepared for all transactions which involves a sale, which has to be considered for collection of taxes as applicable. The next term is transfer entry order, TEO. This is a document issued by the concerned project engineer, usually an executive engineer, for transferring the materials in stock at a particular project site to another project site under the same officer. This is essential to transfer the extra materials available at a project site to another site where it is required. Or in certain other cases, a project may be temporarily shut down owing to many reasons, and the materials at stock will be perishing due to the non-usage. For example, the cement stored at that site can be transferred to another site where the work is in swift progress. Another reason is there may be excess stock at one site and another site may be needing it very urgently. In that case also, the stock at one project site is transferred to another project site. So the order given by the executive engineer permitting the transfer of construction materials from one project site to another project site is termed as transfer entry order. In this slide, we discuss about the precautions to be followed in handling of the materials. The first point is follow the handling instructions. In each material packing, there will be some instructions regarding how the product should be handled, such as do not use hooks. In the case of fragile material, the symbol of the wine glass will be given, indicating that the material is a fragile material. In certain cases, an arrow mark or an umbrella may be indicating how the product should be kept, how the packet should be kept, which is a top side, etc. So follow the handling instructions. In the case of chemicals, the specific conditions of handling will be given on the packing. So we have to follow specific instructions given in the handling of materials given on the packet. Second point is no material should be thrown. Generally, during the time of unloading, there is a tendency among workers to throw the materials without knowing the intricacies involved in that. So as a general principle, do not throw the material. Third point is material should not be smelled or tasted, especially the chemicals may be toxic or hazardous. So do not smell any material or taste any material. Next point is use appropriate gloves while handling abrasive materials or hot materials or hazardous chemicals, etc. We have to take care of our skin, our nose and our eyes and so on. So wear appropriate safety gadgets like gloves, masks, goggles, etc. while handling hazardous or abrasive materials. Next point is follow the storage conditions of the material. The shelf life of the material will be indicated on the packet and storage instructions will be given on the packet. In certain medicines, you might have noticed that keep in a cool condition. Such medicines will be kept in fridge. So follow the storage instructions of each material. Some materials can be stored in open air like broken stone or bricks, etc., etc. But all materials cannot be kept in the open condition. Some things has to be kept away from the moisture like cement, and some materials should be kept away from flames, especially petroleum based materials has to be kept away from the flames and so on. Then verify the shelf life and use it within the period specified. So here we have to adopt the FCFS philosophy, first come, first serve. By this way, we can avoid the dead stock or the stock which is of no use. In this slide, we discussed certain processes adopted in the store management, especially in government departments. And these procedures are also followed in many of the large private organizations. First one is stock verification. Annually, the physical stock verification will be done in all government departments to assess the physical stock present and to check with or tally with the stock as per the stock book. This is done meticulously at the end of each financial year. During the stock verification process, we make a list of the items which has become unserviceable or unusable due to any reason, and these materials will be removed from the stock through proper process. So a list will be prepared in the KFC form 15 and it will be given to higher officer for inspection and verification. So after the inspection and verification by the higher officer and convincing about the reason for becoming unserviceable, these items will be removed from the store. The process of removing unserviceable items from the store is known as writing off. So for writing off of the material, we have to prepare a survey report and a list of such unserviceable items in KFC form 15. And this is a process of writing off of the material. First, the list of the items that has become unserviceable will be prepared in the KFC form and it will be submitted to the higher officers, and the stock verification officer will conduct a physical inspection of these items and will give permission for disposing the items through public auction, and the whole process is known as writing off. Then during the physical inspection, the stock verifying officer will see that whether there is any surplus materials in the store. There may be many reasons for having a surplus stock which has to be further investigated. So the surplus stock should be recorded in the stock book. It cannot be taken out by the storekeeper and has to give explanation why such surplus stores has occurred. So the surplus stores should be specifically mentioned in the store verification report or the stock verification report. Then sometimes many items will be lying in the project site abandoned, an old mixer machine or an old vehicle which is left in the project site by the contractor, or any other item which is found in the project site which is not in the stock should be taken into safe custody. Safe custody means these items will be taken into the stores with specific orders of the higher officer, and these extra items found in the project site will be disposed through public auction. The reason for leaving these items at the project site by the contractor is that it may not be economical for the contractor to take back the old and unusable machineries or equipments. So he may leave certain things abandoned at the project site which should not be disposed by any other means. It has to be taken into the custody of the department and should be disposed by government procedure. Next is a document which is prepared very frequently, which is material accounting statement. Depending on the consumption of the material as the progress of the work, the material accounting statement will be prepared. The stock which is received at the project site will be added to the stock, and the materials which are issued and consumed during the ongoing construction process will be shown on the issue side. So the receipt and the issue and the balance will be shown in the material accounting statement. The consumption of the material should be according to the specification. When more materials are consumed, the project engineer is responsible to give explanation why more materials are consumed than what it is given in the specification of the work. So this has to be prepared periodically, maybe once in a month or once in 3 months and so on. So the material accounting statement will show the actual balance of the construction materials at a project site. In this slide, we discuss certain terminologies related to store management. The first term is reorder level. When a new stock has to be ordered, this is the reorder level. The buffer stock to be kept at the time of ordering because the lead time demand has to be met from the buffer stock. Suppose daily consumption of the cement is 50 bags and the lead time for receiving a new stock is 2 days. So we have to keep 100 bags in stock at the time of ordering so that these 100 bags of cement can be used within the lead time of 2 days, 50 bags on each day. So this is a reorder level, the minimum stock or the buffer stock which has to be kept at the time of reorder of each material. The reorder level depends on the demand of the item at the project site or the consumption of the item daily or weekly, and also the lead time of the new order for complying with the order placed. So what is the lead time? Generally it may be 2 days or 1 week. In certain cases the lead time may be 1 month. So we have to keep a stock which is required for 1 month. So that depends on the availability of the material and the consumption of the material. Next is economic order quantity. This is a terminology which is frequently asked in each and every question paper. Certain things may be coming in packets and there may be an transporting mechanism or a transporting quantity, a transporting capacity for a particular item. Generally in our conventional lorries, 200 bags of cement is transported. So whether we are transporting 150 bags or 100 bags in the same lorry, we have to give the same rent for the vehicle. So in such cases, what is the optimal quantity which can fetch at the project site at the least cost? Such quantity is called economic order quantity. That may depend on the packet or the capacity of the item which is readily available in the market and also on the transporting capacity of the vehicle. I will give an example. Suppose we bring 1 m cube of sand through a goods auto rickshaw. Then we can bring 3 m cube of sand in a mini lorry and 5 m cube of sand in a truck. We can consider the case of cost per 1 m cube. Generally, the cost of the material will be minimum in the case of 5 m cube transported through truck. So that depends on many other parameters. In certain cases, quantity discounts may be given. When we purchase more, there may be quantity discounts. So considering all these factors, the cost of the material at the source per unit item, the standard packet of the material, and also the transporting capacity of the vehicle which we are hiring. Considering these three parameters, that is the cost of the material at the source for a particular quantity, then the standard packing of the material, the standard quantity of the items in a particular packet or a bundle, then the transporting cost for that quantity depending upon the capacity of the transporting vehicle. So considering all these factors, we can arrive at a particular quantity for which the at the site cost will be the minimum. Such a order quantity is called economic order quantity. Next is the process for delivery of goods through railway. When a parcel is booked in railway or a lorry parcel service, 2 copies will be given, a consignor copy and a consignee copy. Consignor is a person who is sending the item and consignee is the person or an organization to whom the booked item is dispatched. So the consignee copy will be sent to the consignee through post and the consignee will produce this copy to the railway goods office or the lorry office and will claim for the material sent in their favor. So there will be 2 copies, the consignor copy which belongs to the sender, the consignee copy which has to be sent to the receiver. So based on the consignee copy only, the items will be delivered from the railway parcel service office or lorry parcel service office. The next term is indemnity bond. In certain cases, the consignee copy may be lost during the postal process or it may be delayed beyond certain time. So in such cases, the consignee can claim the materials sent to them by executing an indemnity bond stating that these items are booked in their favor and no one else has claim over the materials. So in the event anybody else claims for these materials, it is their responsibility to settle the matter. This is the general conditions given in the indemnity bond. Indemnity bond is not only given for taking the items from a goods parcel service or a lorry parcel service, it is also used in many other cases that the responsibility rests with the person who is executing the bond. So indemnity bond is a bond executed by the consignee stating that the items dispatched actually belongs to them and no one else has any claim over the material. Then the term is demurrage and wharfage. This is the compensation which has to be given to the railway or the lorry parcel service for the delay of removal of the items from the parcel office. So demurrage is generally the term used for the delay in unloading and making the goods wagon free for further activity. So any item which is sent by railway goods service has to be unloaded within a specific hours of the day. So as soon as the goods arrives at a station, the goods service will inform the consignee that the item has been arrived and the consignee has to remove the item from the wagon within the specified time. Otherwise, the consignee has to pay the demurrage charges for the delay in unloading the items from the goods wagon. Wharfage is also a similar term. In certain cases, the items will be unloaded by the railway goods service or the lorry service and will be kept in their storage. So if the item is not removed from the stores within a specific time, we have to pay a compensation which is generally termed as wharfage. So wharfage is a penalty imposed for the delay in removing the item from the railway goods office or from the lorry parcel service godown, whereas demurrage is the compensation or the penalty imposed for the delay of the unloading of the particular item from the railway wagon. In the next 3 slides, we discuss the transportation problem. It is a general case of an optimization problem. In this case, some item will be available at certain sources for a certain price, and the consumer may be requiring these items at a particular quantity. So what is the optimum price and optimum quantity available at each source, and how we can optimize the purchase from different sources depending on the demand and available supply is the case of transportation problem. So transportation problem is an optimization problem between the demand and supply of items from certain sources to certain destinations. While solving this problem, we come across certain assumptions. The first assumption is only a single item of commodity is being shipped from an origin to a destination. Second assumption is total supply is equal to total demand. And the third assumption is the unit transportation cost of the item from all sources to the destinations is certainly and precisely known. We know the transportation cost from each source to each destination. And the fourth point is the objective is to minimize the total cost. It is an optimization problem. In the first case, we consider only a single commodity, and the second case, the total supply and the total demand are equal, and the third assumption is the unit transportation cost of each item from a particular source to particular destination is known to us, and fourth point is the ultimate objective of the transportation problem is the optimizing the cost or the total cost. Here, the problem is given as a matrix, and the available supply from the source P1 is 50, P2 the availability is 75, and from P3 the availability is 25. So you can see the retailers R1, R2, R3 and R4 require 20 units, another R2 requires 20 units, R3 requires 50 units, R4 requires 60 units. So altogether it is 20 plus 20, 40, 40 plus 50, 90, 90 plus 60, 150. So the demand is 150 units, and the availability from source P1 is 50, availability from source P2 is 75, and from the source P3 is 25. So altogether the supply available is 150. So the demand is 150 and the supply is also 150. So how we can find an optimum purchase from each source at the minimum cost? This is the problem. Different sources are there and different supplies are there. The demand and the supply match each other, that is 150 units we need and 150 units are also available. So the problem will be given as a matrix like this. This is a slide which shows the solution. Actually, the solution is arrived in different steps, and this is a final solution table. The previous tables are given in my textbook. For convenience, I am giving the final solution table. The values which are given in the cell, that is 3, 5, 7, 6, 2, 5, 8, 2, 3, 6, 9, 2, etc. are the unit cost of the material at each source. The values given in each cell indicates the unit cost of each item at each source. Then the method adopted is known as northwest corner method. Northwest corner means we are considering the top left cell at the first, and once that cell is exhausted, we remove either the row or the column. Then we consider the remaining matrix, and again we consider the top left, that is northwest corner cell, and allocate the maximum in that cell. Then we either remove the row or column and move to the next process and so on. So in this case, we can see that the northwest corner of the first matrix is P1R1, the cell P1R1, and the cost of unit item in that cell is 3. Here we need 20 units for the retailer 1, and the supplier 1 has got 50 units in stock. So we can allocate the demand of 20 units to this cell. So the northwest corner or the top left corner with unit price 3 is allocated with a quantity of 20, so that the demand of the retailer R1 is fully met with. So in the next matrix, we can remove the column R1 since all the items are met with. Consider the remaining matrix R2, R3, R4 versus P1, P2, P3. Here in this case, the northwest corner is the cell P1, R2. So allocate the maximum possible to that cell. So in this case, the demand is 20 and the 20 units are allocated to that cell from the remaining 30 units in stock with P1. So 20 units are given to retailer R2 from the remaining stock of 30 and allocated to the cell P1 R2, which has got a unit price of rupees 5. So again, the source P1 has got 10 units in stock. The second column R2 is also exhausted with the demand. Consider the remaining matrix R2, R4 and P1, P2, P3. Then the cell P1R3 is the northwest corner, which has been allotted the 10 units available with the source P1. So 10 units are allotted to cell P1R3, which is having a unit price of 7. So we can delete that row P1 since all the available items at source P1 is exhausted. Likewise, we can move further and allocate the supply and demand based on the availability and the demand. So the cell P2R3 has been allotted with a quantity 40, and that demand is met with. The demand of the retailer 3 was 50. So 10 units were allocated from source P1 and the remaining 40 units were allocated from the source P2. And the demand of the retailer R4 is met from sources P2 and P3. 35 units are allocated from source P2 and 25 units are allocated from source P3. So by this way, all the demands are met with from the available sources. However, this is not the maximum optimization. This is only a methodology which is known as northwest corner method. There are other methodologies which are more optimal than the northwest corner method. This is only a methodology which is generally adopted. This is a very simple methodology. Other methodologies like least cost method, etc. are there, which is more optimal. However, this problem, transportation problem, is introduced to have a feel how the optimization methods are adopted in procuring the materials. While solving such problems, each step should be given in the solution process. In this case, all the solution processes are put together and only the final slide is given in this slide. As I mentioned in the beginning, all these presentations are made based on my textbook and the syllabus of the diploma program, which gives the further details in this regard. With this, the part 2 of the module 3 is over, and the last part of the module 3 is given in the third presentation, which gives an idea about the machineries and equipments used in the project site and the methods for procuring machineries and equipments, in general about the management of machineries and equipments. The first 2 modules were presented in Malayalam, and from the third module onwards I switched to English as the medium of presentation since the students has to write the examination in English. I hope the presentations were simple and easy to understand. Thank you all.